Pharaoh was the name of the rulers of Egypt, which designated the royal residence. He was an army leader and controlled trade expeditions. He supervised the water system and stored the grain. Ancient Egyptians believed that each living pharaoh was a living god. They believed that each pharaoh was the human form of Horus. The pharaohs were very important to Egypt because they pleased their gods, so good fortune would come to Egypt. The pharaohs believed that everyone should be treated with justice. The pyramids were burial places for the kings, until they were taken up into the paradise they expected. The massive size of the pyramids protected the pharaohs from grave robbers, as well as displaying the importance of the king. It seems that the pyramids were oriented towards the rising sun, demonstrating a religious significance. As with the ancients throughout the Middle East, the Egyptians worshipped the sun god. Inside the pyramids, builders placed the items needed for habitation in the afterlife. These items were the pharaoh's most treasured possessions, such as boats, food, clothing, and luxury items. Large pyramids were needed to house massive treasures. The burial chamber was placed directly in the center of the pyramid. In its interior, the construction had a chamber where the mummified cadaver of the pharaoh was deposited, with a plethora of offerings. To avoid the theft of these treasures inside the pyramid, the architects built a real labyrinth of false passages to confuse the thieves. The ancient Egyptian art of writing is known as hieroglyphics, meaning sacred writing. It was made of picture signs. Hieroglyphics writing was from right to left. Later on, Egyptians developed a 24-letter alphabet. Hieroglyphics dominated in the landscape of the Egyptian civilization. These elaborate symbols were ideal for inscriptions on the walls of majestic temples and monuments. The ancient Egyptian language continued to be spoken and evolved into what became known as the Coptic language. The impact of the Rosetta Stone on the decipherment of hieroglyphics was crucial. This black balsed stone carried an inscription in 3 scripts: Greek, hieroglyphics, and Demotic. Scholars soon realized that the 3 texts contained the same content. Since the section in Greek could be understood and readily translated, the stone provided an unparalleled opportunity to attempt a decipherment of the hieroglyphics and Demotic. It recognized for the first time that Egyptian texts used alphabetic and non-alphabetic signs alongside each other. The fertile banks of the Nile River offered several annual crops, as many floodings the river produced. This condition boosted the existence of various independent agricultural settlements. The Egyptians turned desert patches into croplands, irrigating them with the Nile's water. This was realized through a complicated network of irrigation ditches and canals. The old Egyptian civilization emerged in the Nile Valley. It was the settlement of early farmers along the banks of the Nile River. The length of the Nile is around 4,132 miles. It is the longest river in the world. The Nile has a strong history in the ancient Egyptian civilization. Most of the historical sites of ancient Egypt are situated along the banks of the Nile River, including cities such as Luxor and Cairo. Today, about 4 million people, which is half of Egypt's population, live in the Nile Delta region. There was a belief in ancient Egyptians that mummification ensured the dead a safe passage to the afterlife. The mummification process had 2 stages. First, the embalming of the body with certain chemicals, then the wrapping and burial of the body. When a body was mummified, its brain was removed through one of its nostrils, and its intestines were also removed. Each organ was placed in its own jar. The only internal organ they did not remove was the heart, because it was considered to be the seat of the soul by Egyptians. In mummification, mud was pushed under the mummy's skin to pad it out. False eyes could be made from onions. Ancient Egyptians mummified not only people but animals too. The body was the essential link between the deceased and his former earthly existence, since it was regarded as a means of supplying him with food and drink for spiritual sustenance in the afterlife. Mummification was developed so that the body could be preserved and remain recognizable to the deceased spirit. In case the mummy was damaged or destroyed, statues of the owner and magical spells were placed in the tomb to act as substitutes and to enable the deceased to receive food and drink. The Book of the Dead is a loose collection of magical spells and incantations. The spells and passwords were placed in the tombs of the ancient Egyptians. It can be thought of as the deceased guidebook to a happy afterlife. The text was intended to be read by the deceased during their journey into the underworld. It enabled the deceased to overcome obstacles and not lose their way by teaching passwords, giving clues, and revealing routes. The purpose of the Sphinx is not known. There are 3 passages into or under the Sphinx, 2 of them of obscure origin. The one of known cause is a short dead-end shaft behind the head drilled in the 19th century. The Sphinx has been a symbol of Egypt from ancient times to the present. It has inspired the imaginations of artists, poets, adventurers, scholars, and travelers for centuries, and has also inspired endless speculation about its age, its meaning, and the secrets that it might hold. The Great Sphinx of Giza is the greatest monumental sculpture in the ancient world. The Egyptian attire consisted generally from a short fabric skirt and a tunic reaching to the ankles. The costume was completed with various adornments. Against the hot sun, Egyptians wore linen clothes. In time, linen use turned exclusive for some social classes and served as caste distinction. Ancient Egyptians used wigs adhered to the head with gold and gemstone diadems, and from which bead strings and fine metal plates hung. Noble women possessed luxury jewelry like wide pearl collars, lapis lazuli, or glass beads. Egyptian women were famous for their makeup. Their toiletries included very refined tools. Both Egyptian men and women wore makeup. They believed that the makeup had some kind of healing power. Actually, it saved them from sunlight, thus giving an impression of its healing abilities. The Egyptians were feared for their war chariots. The Egyptian war chariot was driven by 2 horses and provided a very rapid, deadly advance. Along their history, Egyptians made long conquest or punishment expeditions into Palestine, Phoenicia, Minor Asia, and Black Africa, this way maintaining the border of the empire. Egyptian archers were very skilled also. Chariots were used by the pharaohs for hunting as well. However, there is a document in Documents in World History entitled Daily Life in Egypt that states how being a scribe would have been a better profession than being a soldier. It states, "A soldier may not rest. There are no clothes, no sandals. The weapons of war are assembled at the fortress of Sile. His march is uphill through mountains. He drinks water every 3rd day. It is smelly and tastes of salt. His body is ravaged by illness. The enemy comes, surrounds him with missiles, and life recedes from him. He dies on the edge of the desert, and there is none to perpetrate his name. He suffers in death in his life. Be a scribe and be spared from soldiering." So although soldiers were above scribes in the class system, some Egyptians believed being a soldier was too dangerous.